Check this out, guys. Let me show yet a different way of doing number 18 on the quiz here. Now, the way I just explained it was that we would like to have an even power right here. So I rewrote it with multiplication to get that even power. X to the 6th times x is really x to the 7th. Now, when you do the square root of x to the 6th, it becomes x to the 3rd, and the square root of x just stays the square root of x. How about this? What if I took this square root as an alternate way of doing it? What if I took that square root and I rewrote it as to the power of 1/2, which I could do? I still have x to the 7th in here. Now, what if I actually multiplied a power to a power? What's 7 times half? 3.5 or 3.5, right? Now, check this out. Entertain this. 3 and 1/2, okay? Now, what does that really mean, 3 and 1/2? It means exactly that. The nice number 3 and also another half. So I'm not saying you have to do it this way. This is just an alternative way of doing it. I could rewrite this. I could rewrite this as x to the 3 times x to the half. Does that make sense? Because after all, if you were to multiply these guys together, what would you do with the exponents? You'd add them and you'd get back to the 3.5. Does that make sense? So if I have 3.5, I could rewrite it as x to the 3rd times x to the half. Now, what is x to the 3rd? It's exactly that. It's x to the 3rd. So you would have x to the 3rd. Now, what is x to the half? We said that anything that has a power of 1/2, it's really the square root. So you take it back to the square root of x. So that's yet another way of getting that same answer, just a different method of doing it. So if you're confused with this first method, then maybe you want to just multiply these and get 3.5 and then split the 3 and the half. X to the 3rd is your answer, and x to the half is really the square root of x. It's totally up to you. I don't know. Just letting you know. It's an alternative way of doing that question. Let's practice another one. Let's just for kicks here. Let's say the square root of x to the what? Give me an odd power. 11. Okay. Square root of x to the 11. So one way of doing it is rewriting it as x to the 10th times x to the 1. And when you split the root, the x to the 10 is really x to the 5th. Because the square root is really a power of 1/2. It's like dividing 10 by 2, you get 5. And the square root of x stays the square root of x. So that's your answer for this one right here. Now, the alternative way of doing it would say, rewrite it as x to the 11th to the 1/2 power. 11 times half. What's 11 divided by 2? That's really 5.5, 5.5. So when you multiply those, you really do get x to the 5 and 1/2 power. And from here, you could split them and write it as x to the 5th and x to the 1/2. So x to the 5th is simply x to the 5th. It stays. But x to the 1/2, that's really the square root of x. So you get the same answer, just done a different way. I think this way is easier, but if you'd like, you could go with this method. It's totally up to you. Yay? Nay? What the hey? Nobody's saying anything. Okay, yay.